Good morning, fourth graders. So this is your video for Tuesday, March 31st, okay? First, we are going to go through our grammar lesson and your grammar assignment for the day. And then I am going to tell you about your reading and your writing assignment for the week. All right, so let's get started. We are going to be on lesson 81. So on page 290, 291 are where we're going to be right now in your yellow grammar book, okay? All right, so we talked about adjectives last week. We know that adjectives modify, describe, tell us more about nouns and pronouns, okay? And we learned that adjectives answer 4 questions. They tell us which, whose, how many, and what kind of. We also learned that when we go to diagram an adjective, we diagram it under the noun or the pronoun that it changes or describes, and we diagram it with a slanted line. Another thing we talked about last week are the articles. There are 3 of them: a, an, and the. Okay, those are called articles, and they are also known as adjectives, and we diagram them as adjectives. Okay, so today we are going to talk about how adjectives can be used to compare. Okay, and there are 3 forms of comparison when we use adjectives to compare. I'm going to show you a board here in just a minute, a whiteboard. I'm going to hold it up in front of my face, and I'm going to go over some of the rules of comparison for adjectives, okay? So I told you there are 3 forms. The first form is when you are just describing one thing. So let's take the word tall, for example. So tall, we are describing one thing. When we are comparing 2 things, we are going to use an ER at the end for the suffix. So it would change to taller. So tall is for one thing, taller is for 2 things. When we are comparing 3 or more things, then we are going to use EST at the end of our word. So we've gone from tall, taller, to tallest, okay? So we add an EST when we are comparing 3 or more things. Now, sometimes when we have a word that has more than 2 syllables, then we are not going to change the end of that word. We are going to add the words more and most, okay? I'm going to show you our board here real quick. So you do not have to write these down. These are kind of the rules that I just went over. If you want to take notes, then you are welcome to pause the video here and write these down, but you do not have to, okay? All this is telling you is adjectives can be used to compare things. When only one person or thing is described, we use the adjective without an ER or an EST. For example, old. Grandfather is old. Jerry is tall. In both of those sentences, we are only describing one thing. When we have 2 people or things that are being compared, we are going to use adjectives that end with the suffix ER. Grandfather is older than grandmother. Of the 2 boys, Jerry is taller. So in both of those sentences, we are comparing 2 things, grandfather and grandmother, and of the 2 boys. So we add the suffix ER. When 3 or more persons or things are compared, we use adjectives that end with the suffix EST. Grandfather is the oldest man here. Jerry is the tallest boy in the class. So in both of those sentences, we are comparing more than 2 things. We are talking about the whole room or the whole class. Then lastly, we are going to use more and most to show comparison with adjectives that have 2 or more syllables. For example, the word thoughtful. I'm not going to say thoughtfuler or thoughtfulest. Those are not words. I would say more thoughtful if I was comparing 2 things, and most thoughtful if I was comparing more than 2 things. Same thing with the word beautiful. I would not say beautifuler or beautifulest. I would say more beautiful if I was comparing 2 things, and most beautiful if I was comparing more than 2 things. Okay, but most adjectives are going to stick with that ER and EST rule. So we have old, older, oldest, tall, taller, tallest, soft, softer, softest, and the list goes on, okay? So just remember, when we're just describing one thing, our adjective doesn't change. 2 things, we add ER. Comparing 2 or more things, we add EST. All right, so now we are going to look at oral drill on page 291. Okay, so on page 291, oral drill part A, it tells us to give the 3 forms of comparison. So they give us some words and they want us to give the 3 forms of comparison. So we've already talked about a few of these. Soft, it's describing one thing. Softer, comparing 2 or more things. Softest, comparing 3 or more things. 2 or more, sorry. Tall, taller, tallest. Smooth, smooth, smoother, smoothest. Green, greener, greenest. Okay? So, the 3 forms of comparison, we're just adding a suffix to the end. Number 5 says beautiful. That was one of my examples. We're not going to say beautifuler. In that case, we're going to say beautiful. More beautiful. We're going to add the word more if we are comparing 2 things. Most beautiful when we are comparing 2 or more things. Okay. Part B. It says to give the correct form of each word in parentheses. So they've given you a word in parentheses and they want to tell you to tell them what form it needs to be in. This is the small house I have ever seen. So we have the word small. So we have to decide, are we comparing 2 things or are we comparing more than 2 things? So I have ever seen, I've seen more than 2 houses. So I am talking about more than 2 things. So I'm going to change small to smallest. This is the smallest house I have ever seen. Okay? This pie is sweet than that one. So I have the word sweet. I have to decide, am I comparing 2 things or more than 2 things? Well, it says that this pie is sweeter than this one. I'm comparing 2 things, 2 pies. So I'm going to change the word sweet to sweeter. Mount Hermon is the high mountain in Palestine. Okay, there are many mountains in Palestine. So I'm comparing more than 2 things. So I'm going to change the word high to highest. Do we get it? Okay, so when we are comparing 2 things, we add the suffix ER to the end. When we are comparing more than 2 things, then we are going to add the suffix EST. All right, I flipped my page over to page 292. I'm still on oral drill. It's number 5. This is going to be a different one. It says you must be considerate than you have been. Okay, so I've got to decide, am I going to use the word more or most? You must be more considerate than you have been. Considerate, remember, has more than 2 syllables. Considerate, okay? So I have more than 2 syllables, so I'm going to use the word more or most at the beginning. Okay, for your homework or your schoolwork today, I want you to do on page 292, you are going to do written practice. I'm going to write it down so I can show you in just a minute. Written practice A, 1 through 6, all you're doing is giving the 3 forms of comparison. Number 1 says small, so you've got small, smaller, smallest. Okay, and then you are also going to do part B. You do not have to write the whole sentence. You're just going to choose the correct word in parentheses. So you're going to do 1 through 10 on that one. So I'm going to show this to you. You can pause the video, you can write it down. That's your assignment for today in grammar. And then we are going to move on, and I'm going to tell you what we are going to work on in reading and in writing for this week. So this is your assignment for grammar. Okay, so on Friday, your parents should have come up to the school and gotten your next book to read. You are going to read The Jungle Book, okay? So 4th graders are reading The Jungle Book. If you were not able to get up to the school to get your book, then we need to either order one, or you need to let your parents know. They need to get with me, and I will find a time to meet them or somehow get this book to them, because we are going to begin reading this book this week, okay? So this book isn't done by chapters. It's divided into 4 parts, okay? So for this week, you are going to read the first part, which is called Mowgli's Brothers, okay? So Mowgli's Brothers goes through page 38. So that's what you're going to read this week. It's not a lot, but you're going to read the first part, okay? So you're gonna stop at Kai's hunting. So Mowgli's Brothers, the first part through page, I'm sorry, that says 38. It's what you're going to read by next Tuesday, okay? This is for you to read at home. So that's your reading for the week. You also, when you got this book, received a packet that goes along with it. You need to be working on answering the questions in the packet to be turned in, okay? All right. For writing this week, you are going to write a research paper. Since we're reading The Jungle Book, you are going to choose an animal from the jungle. Any animal you want to. An animal that lives in the jungle. And you are going to research that animal. The first thing you need to do is do your research, whether it's online, the encyclopedia, books that you have around the house. You need to do some research. Write your notes down all about the animal that you choose. Then, after you have written down your information, you've done your research, then you are going to begin your paper. Your paper is going to be 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph is going to be the name of your animal and a description of your animal. So what does your animal look like? All right. Paragraph 2 is going to be all about their habitat. Where do they live? Like what part of the country, what part of the jungle, and where's their house? Do they live in a cave? Do they live in the trees? Do they live in the water? So tell me all about their habitat. Paragraph 3, all about their food. What do they eat? How do they get their food? This is all stuff you are going to research. And then the final paragraph, all of these animals are going to have some interesting facts that you're going to want to throw in there. Paragraph 4 is where you put those interesting facts, and then end your paper with why you chose this animal, why you liked this animal. Okay, so if you need to, I would pause the video here. I would write down the outline. So this kind of tells you what you need to be looking for in your research. So you're going to write that down and work on writing your paper, okay? So this research paper will be due next Tuesday. Things are a little different. Normally when we're writing a paper in class, we would rough draft. You would bring it to me, we would edit it together, and then you would do your final. Things are all different now. So I still want you to write that rough draft as part of the writing process. Okay, remember, we research, we brainstorm, we outline, and then we do our rough draft, and then we publish or our final draft. So I still want you to write that rough draft. Then I want you to get one of your parents or an older sibling to edit it for you. Make corrections, show you maybe if you missed some capitalization or some punctuation, or maybe they see something that you need to add in or take out. Have them edit it for you, and then write your final draft, and your final draft is what you will turn in to me, okay? All right, so that's your writing for the whole week. Now that doesn't mean to wait until this weekend to do it. This is gonna take a little bit of time. So start now, choose your animal today, begin your research for a couple of days, and then go ahead and start writing your paper, okay? So I will remind you the rest of the week on the videos that you need to be doing that, but it's something that you're going to need to do on your own. So read the first part of the book, Mowgli's Brothers, work on your paper, choose your animal, and then for today, do your grammar, page 292, written practice A and B. And then tomorrow I will put another video up for your next grammar lesson. Okay, I hope y'all are having a great day. I miss y'all, and I hope to hear from you soon. Remember, if you are stuck on anything, you can always have your parents text message me. They can set up a time to FaceTime, and if you're having trouble, and we can FaceTime and work through things together. Okay, hope y'all have a great day.